above and beyond that, Joseph Valier wrote a letter to the editor. Was it in your paper? It was in the Daily Interlake. And he's pushing for the Constitution. Now let me get you some information that's being pushed by people who don't want us to have a constitutional convention. This individual, his name is Fritz Snyder. He happened to be one of the delegates to the 1972 Constitution Convention. The creation of a state's fundamental law, its constitution, is a defining moment in history of a state. There were 100 delegates to that convention, as there would be again to a new constitutional convention. And he says that because Montana's constitution is the 7th shortest constitution in all of the states in the nation, it's a good constitution. All right, define the logic there, I don't know what it is. Since the passage in 1972, there have been 30 amendments to it. How do we amend this thing? Anybody have an idea?
Petition is one.
What?
Your petition to put it on
Well,
the ballot.
constitutional initiative, yes, that's one. What's another way?
To the legislature?
Yes, they put out a referendum. And we vote yea or nay, whatever that is. How many times have we had a constitutional initiative on the ballot and it got overturned by the Supreme Court after it was voted on?
It happens way too often.
Way too often. And do you know that there's a clause in here? I just found it tonight. I did not even know it was there until I was doing a little more reading. All right, let me find that spot because I marked it. Okay, so my finger is not on it, apparently. Let me see here, maybe it's... No. There's a chapter in here on amending, or on the judiciary, it says here. It was in that chapter. And that's another thing. You'll find that they'll talk about initiative process in one spot, and they talk about initiative process in another spot, such as the judiciary. There's 15 chapters in this thing. So it's not that hard to read and get through, but it is kind of hard sometimes to understand because they have environmental voice in it. Where is that chapter? There's a chapter we hadn't read in our Constitution studies yet, and I wasn't totally aware that it was there, but there is a clause in here. When you get the initiative passed, after the election has happened, there is to be no opportunity to overrun it or override it. None. It's a decided matter. But what does the judiciary do? They overthrow it for why? Many different silly reasons. One, you got 2 sections that you're covering in that law, and therefore it wasn't set up right, and now we can't accept it, even though it passed by whoever knows how much. And I found that in here, and I went, look, there it is! You know, but also, so another contradiction comes up, that in Article, see what article is it? Article 5, that each bill brought before the legislature that requires money can only have one subject clearly expressed in its title. So hasn't the Supreme Court taken that a little bit further and went into the constitutional initiatives? It's not even referring to the initiatives. It's referring to a bill in the legislature. 2 different animals, right? And when you look under the section where they can amend the the Constitution, that's not brought up again. It's not stated again. And it's only stated here. And do you remember Schweitzer suing the legislature not too long ago? Do you remember that case? He was upset about House Bill 2. House Bill 2 is always your appropriation bill to have the state run for however much longer. It gives out the money for all the departments, and every department is a different subject, is it not? It says right here, the bills can only have one subject. If any subject is embraced in an act and is not expressed in the title, well, you're done. But there's one bill that don't have to have only one subject, and that's House Bill 2. So what's Schweitzer suing the legislature over? The problem that he didn't have line item veto. And I thought when I read this section after it came out that he was suing the legislature, I just thought, what is this guy, dumb idiot or what? You know, I mean, I can apply those terminologies to him many times over, but...
that lawsuit's not over House Bill 2.
Oh, it says so in the article.
It's House Bill 676.
672? Then I'm not sure what that is.
676, it's House Bill 676, and that bill has many different entities to where the money's to go to. And it's different than House Bill 2, and that's why he's suing the legislature, is because it doesn't have the one, it
So
doesn't...
then the newspaper reported it wrong.
Yeah.
There you go.
How
That
unusual.
happens too. You know.
How odd.
Well, when Joe Valier wrote his article in the paper, I said, wow, he's really hitting it on the head. He talks about the contradictions that go on in this book. One chapter is on education. You go back to Article 8, and there's other stuff in there on education, and the reason that there was a big lawsuit over the funding of education. This book right here. It had a contradiction going on, and they were bound and determined to fix it through the courts. That isn't the only subject, though, that has contradictions. And Joe Valier talks about the weak Second Amendment clauses. And I'll find that for you and read it to you. It's in Article 2. If you have this book,
Article 2 is on page 6?
No, it's under,
Article 2, Section 12.
yeah, there you go. Right to bear arms. The right of any person to keep or bear arms in defense of his own home, person, and property, or in aid of the civil power when thereto legally summoned, shall not be called in question. Well, I'll tell you a little incident. I haven't even finished this clause, but my husband had a gun in his pocket on his own property in June. And he was called into question because he had a gun in his pocket, and the person who was driving a vehicle in our yard said, "You've got a gun, I'm going to sue you." And he had to go through the court system to defend himself on that. No. It should have been thrown out. I mean, the whole thing was shown to many people who said, why wasn't that thrown out? He spends a weekend in jail. He has to be on house arrest for 4 months. And in the end run, they're going to tell him that he can get rid of this charge by being in good behavior for the next 3 years. And then this charge will go away, dry up. Nobody will know you ever had it. All you guys know.
Then they got my gun himself.
Yeah,
That was my
exactly.
next question.
So I'm telling you, that right to keep and bear arms is not that strong. In fact, the judge in the courtroom said, "I am death on guns," and that's a direct quote. He's up for election, and we hope to vote him out.
You're here.